Hi, I'm Ben Richardson, and you're listening to the Karate Podcast, where we talk about karate, the competitive sport of kumite, and the warrior's journey. Brought to you in association with Kumite Coach, the world's first progressive online high-definition coaching platform, created by coaches and fighters for coaches, fighters, and students of karate. Join kumitecoach.com today and take your karate to the next level. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Karate Podcast. It is the last one in the season today, and I am super excited to have with me once more the great Calum Robb. We all know Calum. He is a multiple world medalist. He has won just about everything you can win, multiple national and British champion, all-round great guy. And Calum, thanks so much for joining us once more on the show.
How's it going, Ben? Thanks very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So I'm going to just dive back to some of the things we touched on toward the end of the last interview, and we were talking about karate combat. And since then, you very kindly put me in touch with Owen Chalmere. We had a great chat around that, and I've actually got into watching a bit more of the karate combat as a result. So one of the things that I wanted to sort of bring up was obviously in karate, we have this very much a straight line concept in what we're doing. You know, punches are very straight. Obviously, we have hook kicks and spin kicks, and the various kicks are more curved. But what I've noticed watching the combat is that people tend to, throw a lot more hook punches, overhands. You know, the typical straight traditional karate style punching, even in the WKF snapping version, seems to go out the window, and there seems to be a preference for that, like uppercut, hook. So just I wanted to like get your understanding of, what's happening in the translation between being a traditional karateka and then moving over to the sort of full contact karate combat. What do you feel is lost in translation? What do you feel is brought in out of necessity as well?
Yeah, so from my side, I definitely felt I went into that probably quite naive. And if you have a look at my fights, especially the first one against Black Magic, I'm probably a true representation of what someone from sport karate coming clean into a full contact scenario was. You could see me with Yakuzukis and Kazamis, I'm pulling them back. But actually, you're right, a lot more people now are following through. They were still early on in the sort of pioneer phase, with when it first came out after Agaev fought in that the karate combat, and they put it on the map. You could see there was a bit of fluidity with the rules. There was no real knees or elbows. Of course, now they've just included knees. Actually, they were very strict on hooks, but now when you watch karate combat, which I'm a big fan of, and Adam Kovacs, the president's doing great things, and people like Agaev now fully invested in karate combat since he's retired. They're going to take it to the next level. They've made some huge signings, but it seems to be a bit more set now about what you can and can't do. Whereas when I was doing it, it was still very much a trial phase. So I found it tough. I felt after my first fight, I came back with my team, and I really needed to think about core boxing. In terms of training for the karate combat, I didn't probably have a good enough amount of time to. I did some Muay Thai, basically tried to fast track myself into karate combat by doing Muay Thai. Now, of course, it's a bit of a strange decision because there was no knees or elbows, but it was getting me used to that. In hindsight, I should have went straight to boxing, which I did in between losing after I lost my first fight, and my second fight, which I fought against Franklin Mina from Ecuador. What I should have done was just do boxing from the off and do a bit of MMA. So what a lot of people now that I know that are on the circuit, and I'm sure Owen's the same, they have core boxing as a foundation. They've obviously got their karate roots and heritage there, but they let
Yeah.
things go a lot more. You know, boxing really taught me not to snap back. The principles are all different. You know, we're a bit more explosive in karate. You know, for a kazami, there's a lot of loading and then it's a big explosion. Whereas with boxing, feet are planted, you know, really nice hip follow through, not snapping punches. So I think a lot of people now are doing a bit of kickboxing.
Mm.
They're trying to recreate little bits of the pit walls, you know, because
Yeah, yeah.
it's another thing. People, when you go in there, you can have a plan, but it's crazy atmosphere in there. Okay, it's a million miles an hour. So actually, you'll notice in my first fight, I go back and I don't raise my feet and I actually fall against the pit wall because I wasn't used to it. So, and you know, it's you train in rings with ropes, but actually you need to recreate that environment. And I know a lot of people are doing that now. They create little ledges and pit walls, and it's
Right.
really clever because if they're having their gym wars or rucks there, when you're tired or when you're hurt or when you're gassing, you know, if you've got that set up, that's going to mimic what's going to happen in there. Okay. So, to answer your question, you know, it's, I feel you can see who's still sport karate and people that go literally from sport karate into karate combat, you can still see them. There was a
Yeah.
few other, well, I'm not going to name them or name drop them on here, but I think it's easy to see people, the pull punches, their chins on show quite a bit. So what a lot of people are doing now is they're doing core boxing because now karate combat seems to be more solidified with the rule set. And you'll watch Owen Chilmia as well. He does a lot of boxing. Yeah, he does a lot of. You can see that, and it's hooks per se aren't allowed, but they let a lot go in there. You know, I wouldn't
Mm.
call it karate punches per se, and I'm sure you know that,
I
Ben. But
wouldn't say they're particularly straight.
no, exactly, but there is a degree of fluidity there. But yeah, kickboxing, boxing, Muay Thai, core boxing mixed with and also takedowns, right? Because
Yeah.
takedowns are not allowed. You can sort of duck down and you can take people down. So yeah, I definitely found that hard, and I think that I was a typical example of somebody going clean in from sport karate, tried to
Mm.
fast track it with a bit of Muay Thai and got caught out. So yeah, I retrained in boxing. I became a very good amateur boxer. And then in my second fight, you can see that I wasn't pulling the punches the same. Unfortunately, I lost on a decision. But that's the way it goes. But yeah, to people who probably watch karate a lot, they probably think karate combat, you know, is different to karate, and it is because it's full contact karate.
Yeah.
But there is some, the purists may say, oh, we don't like the hooks or the knees now, but they still have their own identity, karate combat, this unique pit wall. They have karate legends in there who are taking the sport to new levels, but they've also
Yeah.
got a lot of people in there who do well. And the point I was trying to make is that I wish I would have jumped to karate combat if it was around when I was about 10 years ago, when I'm 25, 26, 27. But then by the same token, I wouldn't have achieved what I was achieved in sport karate if I'd done that. But what you will
Yeah.
see if you go on karate combat and you go on the roster and you see that the fighters they have there, a lot of them that are doing quite well have quite a lot of good amateur MMA experience. So my
Right.
other point was early on, you could see a huge difference in people. There was a guy called Edgar Scrivers from Latvia who had a golden belt for a long time. He was a lighter weight fighter and he'd had multiple fights in different leagues in MMA. And it showed because he was so comfortable in there. He was so comfortable in the pit. Whereas
Yeah.
it's something completely different for true karateka to go in there because we're used to stop start, hajime, yame, you know, point based sport. Whereas with that, it's a continual, there's no, you know, unless it's stopped or to get broken up for the fight, if you're down, it's 3 minute round, continual sparring. So that's something else, you know, my camp did with me in between my last, so when I got beat by Black Magic and then going into boxing, I made sure I was doing more boxing rounds, you know, going to that training without out your comfort zone, you know, you're having to get used to that and stop pulling your punches. That was a huge. I was a novice again when I went to boxing, because my boxing coach was pulling me up, because all the principles that were ingrained in me from karate, I suddenly had to change for boxing,
Yes. Yeah.
because your feet, you should never put your feet together, you know, wider, you're planted, don't pull your punches, keep your chin down, elbows in, keeping your hands up, whereas karate we have the hands down like this. So everything was different. But yeah, so
Do you think that do you think it's a consequence of the fact that people are trying to put each other down with the punches, that it affects the range and that negates to some extent the nice long straight karate punches? You obviously see people break in distance with those, but then obviously as
yeah,
that range comes much closer than it would in a sports karate match, then people are having to adjust the technique to get it to work.
exactly. And you know, the referee isn't going to stop you, whereas in karate, you know, the referee would stop it or break you up. And in this, you can be chest to chest for quite a long time. That's completely normal as long as you're
Mm.
still functional in there. And that's when a lot of the hooks come in. And, you know, in karate combat, you're scored for aggression and more points towards kicks and takedowns. But actually, admittedly, you still see a lot of rucks with the hands. And I think it's karate. I always remember going to Bucks. I'll use Bucks as a reference. British universities and colleges sport back in my uni days. I used to hate going to those at times, because if you'd fight someone who was quite inexperienced,
Yeah.
you're in that environment and they don't give you that space, because the higher you go in karate, the better your opponents get. And there's this, you know, the invisible line, don't cross the distance, and everything looks clean and clinical. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
but people coming in and try and do a mayagiri when you're really close, and it's just carnage. And I think in
Awkward.
karate combat, it's a bit of the same, because we want that space. We want them, you know, we want the distance, we want to break the line. But then there's all the adrenaline that comes with the pit and the crowd, and
Yeah.
just you're in there and it's a fight. And actually distance, this is what I'm saying, true karatekas going clean into that, you're a bit of a rabbit in the headlights. I certainly was, and I've spoke to a few other people who are like, that was very different to what I thought. Whereas the more seasoned MMA people that have went to karate combat are very comfortable in there. You can see that, you know, and
Mm.
they can walk you down. They're protecting their temple, their chin, elbows tucked in. You know, they can eat some hits and get into that space where we're
Yeah.
probably uncomfortable. All we've probably got is some takedowns, some, you know, some sotogeris, things like that. But actually, they're very comfortable in that space, and you can see that.
Yeah. Just a side note, Matt Sensei, he has a great drill called the bad fighter drill, and it's all about what you just said. Is you get that awkward novice fighter who's doing everything wrong, but they have a way of often sucking people down to their level. So your
Happens.
level drops because you're like, how
Yeah.
do you deal with this? And you end up like in their game as a and obviously the skill is then to just reset yourself, pick them off from with technique. But it's quite an interesting point you raised there.
We're not used to that. Another fighter a guy I used to fight all the time was James Brunton from Northern Ireland. Great fighter, okay, and used to always fight in the open weight. I wish they would bring that back. Open weight
Yeah,
division,
open weight
absolutely.
was great.
Yeah, just to
Everything's got
sort of
open weight.
yeah, but he was a great fighter, and he could switch up his style, but he didn't give you a minute's piece, seconds piece. He was just constant, you know, you would almost be at times try to push him off so you could reset, and he just wouldn't give you that time, and you had to
Mm.
deal with it. And he knew you didn't like it. And I think that's why. And for people like Agev again, who's probably the greatest fighter of my time, current time, you know, he just adapts so well. He's obviously doing great things. He's just beat Raymond Daniels, who's a phenomenal professional kickboxer. Don't know if you
Yeah,
watched that fight.
yeah,
And
I
he
did.
fought
Yeah,
very smart. He's adapted very well, but he's quite
I get,
comfortable in that tight space.
yeah,
Whereas a lot of us sport karateka aren't. So it's learning to deal with that continuous. I mean, principles are so different. We're not even allowed, we're semi-contact. This is full contact. We're stop
mm.
start. This is continuous fighting. You know, there's a
It,
few more tricks.
yeah, I think it's really interesting. You get a lot of traditionalists talking about, the one hit sort of kill of karate, and like, I just need one hit and I'll put
Double
someone
whip on.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I came from a Shobuppon background.
yeah,
And I guess I'm sort of talking about, that the 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 traditionalists, if there's such a word, in the club, that have that belief that sport karate is too, light, and it's like, if you hit them once with that good shot, everyone can get a lucky punch. But I think the karate combat is demonstrating that one hit, and these are guys who can hit, right? And there's not many people taking people out with that first punch.
yeah.
Um, so I think,
And
as
fitness as well, Ben, because even though we're incredibly fit and top sport karateka are, you got that stop start element again where you can take tactical breathers. There's little things going on there. Whereas when
mm,
you're continually fighting for 3 minutes, it's hard. It's a different way. It's a completely different preparation, completely different type of training and training camp that you need for that. But yeah, I think Agayev's a great example. You know, he's sport karate. He's, he was the first one to fight on karate combat. He then went away and did the Olympics, and now he's came away from karate altogether, and he's pouring all his
mm,
efforts and energy into karate combat. And you can see
yeah,
from his socials what he's doing. He's doing a lot of mixed martial arts, and he's adapting for that type of stage, so to speak.
yeah. And Agev's a an incredible fighter. His brother's a high level judoka. I think Agev's done judo. I've seen him hit pads like a boxer, like years ago hitting pads, and his ability to take people down, is phenomenal.
And
So
that's what I
he,
miss about the heavyweight, because I remember him fighting Stefano Maniscalco, who was a heavyweight like me back in the day. There's I miss that. I wish that would come back. I'm sure we'll talk about it later about, sport karate, but that's one thing I wish would come back is the open weight, because
mm,
everyone loved it. I remember back in our day, Ben, it would be at the British or something, and the open weight at the start of the day would have 40 plus strong entries.
yeah,
And then come the end of the day, it would be about six
yeah,
because everyone was absolutely battered to bits. So
yeah.
I always managed to stay injury free to a degree. And then it was
Uh,
like a bit more threadbare. The category come the end. It was probably me and Rory or something. But yeah.
that's quality. um, Yeah, so what was I going? So obviously there's that element of cross training. I think it's becoming more and more normal to bump into people in karate clubs who are cross training now, whether that's boxing, like you said, or there's definitely a big contingent of karateka doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I know a lot of people, obviously myself included, that do that. So what do you feel are the benefits of cross training that can bring, and are there any negatives that can come back the other way as a result?
I mean, if your main focus is karate, cross training is great as long as it's functional. I would say, as long as you're not going down the wrong path to a degree where it becomes mainstay for you. Some of the habits are, we're creatures of habit, and if you drill it, you learn it. And things like kickboxing and boxing, they're good for fitness, I would say, because I remember going to boxing thinking I'm a fit guy, but I've never done circuits like this. And it's a completely different way of training. So, from a fitness aspect, I think MMA and doing cross training with MMA whilst maintaining karate as your main focus is a win win, because you're going to be super fit. And if you're super fit, I mean, what I always used to say when I was doing seminars is that you increase your chances of winning instantly by, you get to a certain level in karate, but if you're fit you can do it more often. It's not as if your quality is going to degrade. If your fitness goes, you can be an easy target. You could be a very gifted fighter, but if your fitness starts to go down, but if you've got a full tank and you know you're fit and you can turn it on and go above 80% for that whole bout, and you can do it for 5 times, over 5 or 6 times, you're going to get medals more often than not. So from a fitness viewpoint, I think great. In terms of like BJJ, I think there's a lot of strengthening there. That's good for obviously it's one-handed takedowns. Correct me if I'm wrong, still with sport karate at the moment. I think it's one hand.
One hand,
rise. So my next door neighbour's a brown belt in BJJ, very big club here. But we met around and we talked about the one-handed stuff, and he was just showing me some maneuvers that would be legal actually in karate. So again, there's little twerks, and his forearms are insane. His grip is insane. Once he gets a grip of you, obviously the gi. So I think again you could tailor that to give you that 1 or 2% extra. That could just because obviously 3 points, right? Ashibarai. You could be getting beat 2-0, and then somebody, you're chest to chest, and if you've got a sort of a unique grip that catches someone off guard, and you can like tuck their heel behind and get them down and finish, that's you. So I think in that regard, from BJJ, I could definitely see a lot of people using that for grips. But then the dangerous thing is with boxing, again, fitness and kickboxing, great. I think it's this tendency to fall through. And obviously, you're governed by contact here, the category ones, Shikokus. So you have to be very careful with that, because the more you get into it, and you know what it's like, you'd be like me, Ben, you go there, it's almost like an extended family. You adapt and you become part of the family there, and you get thrown into things. It happened when I was training for Karate Combat. I competed a few times for this club, and I was actually going to go to the Scottish amateur box. You've got to watch you don't get too immersed, because that can overtake. And then if you go back to karate, but you've been doing more boxing bouts, you'll start, and you're tired, things will start going back to default. So I think fitness, to answer your question very shortly, fitness, yes, 100%. Grips for the Ashibarais from things like BJJ. But yeah, it's more common. You can see that people are doing that day to day. And there's a sort of fashion side to it as well, because a lot of this gear looks good. The rash guards for BJJ and things like that. A lot of people, you can see it on their socials that they're doing that as well. And it's nice to see rash guards are now common for people in the warm-up area in karate comps, people do that all the time. So it's quite nice. You see that,
I think it's fascinating, the way jiu-jitsu has cultivated this kind of culture around their art that, like you mentioned, it's cool to do jiu-jitsu. The clothing is kind of seen as cool. There's a strong just subculture of support around what they're doing, that belief that what they're doing is like the ultimate art. But it's done, I feel, in a positive way, and it's drawing a lot of people into it. It's very open, it's very relaxed, it's very informal. I think that there's a need for formality, because I think it helps people understand the values we teach in martial arts. I don't like the completely informal styles. But that's club to club. But I think what I feel we could take some of that the jiu-jitsu has and bring it to karate, because I think there's still a very hard traditional kind of presence in many places, and that can seem off-putting as a beginner. You're looking at two clubs, the jiu-jitsu club, which is warm, friendly, hey my friend, come and train, it's all good, high fives, fist bumps. And then you've got like the hard line, bow, stand at the edge, kneel down, do all this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong, but I'm just saying that I think there's always something to learn, and there's benefits to both ways. I definitely feel jiu-jitsu could take a lot from karate and improve the sort of student mindset
Values and traditions
and
there.
values.
Yeah.
I think, there's that overlap there, and that's just two arts out of many, but
Yeah, it's a little bit
it's quite
informal. It's
interesting.
almost, yeah, it's a little bit like CrossFit. Every man and their dog was doing it at one stage. It almost became like a religion. I mean, America first and then Britain second. And actually there is and the reason that my neighbor goes is the social aspect as well. And he says it's quite noisy all the time. So I get what you mean. I've never actually been to a BJJ class, but I've seen stuff online.
Yeah,
But he sometimes wishes that the instructor was, I don't know. I know they do free rolling quite a lot, but I understand what you mean. If they could make it more formal and instill some values there that we have in karate, I don't know. I think that would be. But again, it's very popular, and it's there is a scene with it, and you can see why people get involved in it. And I think things like UFC have,
yeah,
and then finding out more about flagship fighters and finding out that BJJ is a mainstay of what they do. One ground, one stand up. I think that's what's helped rise it to stardom and
yeah.
popularity.
Yeah, I think so. In terms of the UFC, at one time it was very stylistic. Then it became you needed to wrestle, do jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and box. And now really
Yeah,
there's the evolution of pure MMA gyms, so therefore the art of MMA in itself is a thing that never previously existed.
yeah,
Um, so, so that leads on into the questions I have here. That as the public becomes more educated in and around combat sports, you've got MMA at various levels, UFC. You've now got karate combat.
yeah.
How can we manage the image of sport combat and still hold true to the values we're propagating as coaches and teachers? About self-discipline, respect, because obviously there's that high element of showmanship in those elite sports, which you're gonna have to look at and say that is not something you want to have your kids do.
Yeah, and almost like a lot of people were saying, oh, it's not karate combat, it's you're topless or you've got no gi top on. But actually what's good about karate combat and bringing it back to the pure martial art is that everyone's got a tedious link back to karate and the
Yeah,
values. And you can see that. So if you do a little bit of research and digging, they don't just let anyone on it. There's people there like that were on it, like myself, Agayev, other people have achieved lots and lots and lots. So you can actually, although karate combat can look barbaric, there can be blood, cuts, which to the purists would never happen in traditional martial arts because that's what it's not about. That's a different set. That's its own entity, karate combat. Okay, that's there. Whereas, even Owen, for example, he loves his karate. He grew up with karate. It taught him discipline. It installed core values in him, and actually, that was his first love, and it's just went into that. I think there's a huge lure with karate combat. It looks great. The concept's great. It gets a lot of airtime. It's very popular. They've got lots of influencers, and yeah, it's based in America. They've got Baz Rutten, George St. Pierre, Wonderboy
yeah,
MMA. They've got a great cast. They've got
yeah,
a great
absolutely.
template. They've got a great template. But what Adam does is he never forgets about the core values of karate. He's got little videos on there. He's very, I mean, Adam Kovacs, the president. He's a black belt in BJJ. He is a multiple world medalist at karate. He fought for Hungary. He did lots for karate. So actually, the underlying message is he's putting karate back on the map. Okay,
Yeah,
and although his main focus now is karate combat, it still encompasses karate. And then when you've got people who love karate and are fans of karate and they connect with someone like Agaev, they can then go back and look at what he's done and his training heritage and the videos. So yeah, don't know
Do,
if that
do,
answers.
do you so do you feel that something like karate combat is a way to draw people back
It can be,
to the
yeah.
sort of foundation, and that's their route into traditional karate training?
The core values, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it can do. They do a lot of promo breakdowns. You know, I've been saying for years that karate needs to be publicized more. I mean, behind football and rugby and a few other sports, it's probably in the top 10 in terms of participation. And you know where I'm going with this, but in terms
Yeah,
of publicity, it's nigh on null. We just can't seem to get airtime. The odd thing on Eurosport here and there, or if we had people in the Olympics, but then it just dampens down again. So with karate combat and with Adam leading from the front there, putting karate back on the map, yeah, it's different to traditional karate, but they do have the links back there to that. And I
yeah,
think
sure.
it's grown at a fast rate, karate combat. So it'll connect with more people, karate fans. And you know, there's lots of people in there that are like idols for younger kids, you know.
Yeah.
So you know,
Well,
maybe if they, yeah, sorry, you go.
it's interesting. Like, you look at the earlier stages of the UFC and how it was then compared to now, and the evolution it's gone through as a sport. Karate combat can easily be on that same trajectory. As you said, initially when it started, the style was very different, and already people have started to progress. The rule set started to change.
They're
And
getting their own little systems. And you know, another thing about that is because it's karate combat, you have to do some sort of karate at some stage to be in it. But
mm,
ironically, probably the best thing to do is do some MMA and cross training. So people probably do boxing and kickboxing, a little bit of Muay Thai, things like that. They probably don't do any karate. They actually leave karate behind, like Agaev has, and just completely go all into MMA now, but the platform's called Karate Combat because Agev wouldn't be on it unless he'd done karate. So then if you
yeah,
know that and you go back to look at that, so it could be motivational for younger kids, you know, seeing that progression, knowing that if that's their end goal, they know that they need to do well in sport karate or traditional karate to have that root, to have that heritage, to then progress on to that. If it is going to be as big as UFC, and it's definitely on the right track at the moment. I mean, in the last 3 years, it's grown massively. It
yeah,
surprised me. It surprised me. But yeah, but the core values Adam still maintains. You know, he's still got that messaging out there. You know, putting karate back on the map. And I don't know if you know this, but the reason when karate combat was born mentally, when the idea was conceived, it was actually when Davidonna fought Agaev at a Paris Open, and Davidonna punched him, and Agaev was knocked down, potentially knocked out, and then he tried to get up, and he was stumbling everywhere. Do you remember that instant?
yeah,
It was
yeah,
all over YouTube. The viewers at home, they can check it out. But Adam Kovacs was there, and at that moment he said, "This is wrong," because it was a great punch that caught Agaev flush, but it was that mindset of the weaker fighters are winning. I'm not saying Agayev's weak, of course he's not, but in this scenario, Agayev was
yeah,
allowed through to. I mean, he couldn't continue, but Davidonna was beat, and Adam Kovacs was there. And I think people, you know, to a layman, they'd be like, "Well, why is he getting beat if he punched him? Is that not what karate is about?" So I think he really wanted. I'm not saying he's a fan of contact, but
yeah,
that's how the idea was born, and from
yeah,
there, you know, he was connecting, he was rubbing shoulders with the right people, and they had a vision. And now he actually got Davidonna and Agaev fighting. They fought fairly recently,
yeah,
and Agaev won. He won that fight, I think, on points. But that's nice to have them go from the Paris Open, you know, Sport
yeah,
Karate
yeah,
Championships,
yeah,
that's a fight in the pit. And it was totally different, of course. But that's how it was born for the record. That was that moment. And Adam wanted to change that because he felt that karate had lost, sport karate, kumite, had lost a little bit of its soul. He felt that. And there was, I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me, there was a phase where weaker fighters were winning bouts, and something that I hate, but there was a lot of gamesmanship going on, feigning injury, and then the rule set clamped back down on that, because if you were simulation, you would be punished very badly, So the rules are changing, all the time in sport karate. I think, the contact element. The contact element's always a contentious one. We never want to see heavy-handedness, but at the same time, we want to see a good strike, and it would demonstrate that's what it's all about, how you would deliver that fatal blow. But it's obviously controlled. That's the whole art of the process. So yeah, I feel the rules at the moment are back on track. I don't like one-handed takedowns. I think it's unnatural. But again, it is a bit weird,
It's weird.
especially for bigger guys like me, to try and do that, because that was Ashi Barai's were a huge part of my game, and to try and do that just with one hand. So I'd like to see that. Again, I haven't checked the rule set because I've been retired since October 2017, but I'm sure that still is the case. That it's one hand takedowns, and I think that's a bit unnatural. But yeah, in terms of the contact, I was just looking at one of the recent championships. I think it was the cadet and juniors in Cyprus, and there was some nice hits going on, and it looked like it's getting back to where it was. So,
and do you have any opinions, or I guess if you were the guy in charge, is there a direction you'd like to see sports karate move to propagate it?
I mean, we definitely need more airtime. I don't know how we get it out there. I remember just little basic videos of scoring points, that were at the Paris Open. I mean, France have always been pioneers, of the sport. They've always been a strong nation. They've always tried to take the sport forward. Ironically, it's not in for the Olympics. I think it's got taken out again, and I thought Paris would have had a strong bid, and I'm sure there's an appeal going on, but I feel that publicity is key. There's never been a problem numbers-wise with karate and participation. Karate, like we've talked about, whether you want to be a journeyman or whether you want to be elite or whether you just want to do it for the hobby, it has so many benefits, self-confidence, discipline, and those are translational skills that can help you succeed in life. But I think getting more publicity will really help karate take it to the next step. And I don't know how that is going to happen. It's not easy. I know the WKF are doing a lot of good work. They have lots of different campaigns going on. And they're gathering momentum on the socials as well, WKF and things like that, trying to educate the masses. But yeah, I in terms of the rules, I've touched on the rules. I don't like this one-handed thing. I also wish they would bring like Grand Slams back. I don't know, and if we could get them on some sort of channel, I think that would be quite good, because I know we're biased, but it'd be great to see Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland. It'd be great to have that and have it on and try and showcase it. I'm not talking about worldly. I'm just talking about within Britain, trying to get that back. But there's a lot of talented fighters at the moment. Just by watching the juniors recently online, just on Instagram, little clips. I was thinking to myself, the standard has risen. So that's a good barometer that the sport's doing well. There's a lot of kids that are doing it at early ages and, staying in the sport, whether they're going on to further education. And that's a testament to karate, because back in my day, there would be big dropouts when you go back and when you, I don't know, when you move out of mum and dad's nest or into the land of living, and or when you turn 18 and you discover alcohol or whatever, you know what I mean? But karate is retaining well, which is good. And there's
Yeah.
some, I mean, I think the level is way higher now than it was when I was that age. I mean, I see 16, 17-year-old kids fight, and I think they would beat me quite easily. And I think the main difference that I see from when I was fighting to now is the kicking ability. So
Yeah.
obviously we know now you get the most points. Karate's it's a sport, it's competitive, it's a game. And if you're a good kicker, you're going to go far if you've got at least one good kick. And I see a lot of nice kicks. And I certainly, when I was training, they were not a big part of my A game. It was mainly bread and butter punches. So, but yeah, somehow some more publicity would help take it to the next level, I think. But I just don't know
Yeah.
how. It's not
I think,
easy.
if you look at jiu-jitsu, again, submission only and the no-gi grappling has become a huge sport. It's fairly terrible to watch at times because it's two guys rolling
Yes.
on the floor. You've got to have some degree of technical
Knowledge.
knowledge to know what's going on. But what they've done really well is they have been great in terms of promotion. So like linking it to things like the UFC. Secondly, they have created a lot of different rule sets. So like one of the best rule sets ever is quintet, where you have two five-man teams. And like fighter one, he fights fighter one on the other team. If he beats him, he has to fight fighter two. If he beats him, he fights fighter three. If he loses, then fighter three fights fighter two on the other team. So you have this like back and forth, which is great.
That's cool.
But there's also like a huge amount of cash prize competitions and promotions put on where people win like £50,000, for that one tournament. And as far as I know, the 10K Clash is still the only
Yeah.
karate tournament around that
So yeah,
offers, you know, and I think it's like, watching two people spar and doing high level karate is very entertaining if you compare it to two guys rolling on the floor. And I love
yeah.
jujitsu, but I'd rather watch the karate guys.
Even judo to a degree. Even judo sometimes.
Yeah,
And even some boxing fights can be boring. And again, like you say, karate have tried. They've done this engagement. So if you're just bouncing around, the referee stops and warns you both. You've got to engage. And I think it's great. It's just getting it out there. And you're right. I did see something about Battle of the Teams as well. I mean, Joe Long would be the best person to speak to about that.
yeah, he
But
did, he did do that.
all, all that would be great, to have that every, every month, every year, sorry, or something just like a little mini league thing or a wee grand slam. Just get the sort of oomph back. I mean, I'm not saying there's oomph lacking, but just these events that can be showcased, yeah,
Yeah,
intensified a little bit.
yeah, 10K is fantastic. The
Package,
way that,
get it on YouTube, get the engagement, get the
yeah,
engagement there from YouTube. I think something like that is the way to go with it.
yeah.
And I know Joe's been doing that. I mean, I know the 10K had a break and then it's been back a little bit, but that's great. And so many people watch it, right? And once it goes
It's
onto
it's
YouTube,
an
other
amazing
people can
event.
watch it.
Yeah, yeah. I can't
Yeah,
wait for the
yeah.
10K. I'm sure there's one coming out this year. I'll have to get Joe back on to tell us when that's going to be.
I think,
But
yeah,
yeah,
that'd be.
yeah, that's fantastic. So have you got any fighters on your radar at the moment in the current circuits at all that you feel we should be
I
watching?
mean, I mean, there's a few from my old club at Christian Cratty that are doing really well. In fact, there's a lad called Benjamin Packwood, who I think he won the European Championships at
Yeah,
the
I saw
weekend.
that actually. Yeah,
Yeah, and he's really good. And I
fantastic.
remember him when he was just a little sprog. And he lives and breathes karate. Great to see, great example, and he deserves it. Um, so he's came back. I think it actually made me feel so old, Ben, because it's 20 years ago, roughly about this time. where I won, believe it or not, cadets minus 75 kilos.
Nice. You just feel like a
I
pencil.
was I was 17 years old. And I'm thinking, wow, that was 20 years ago. But then I think if I was to fight Ben, Ben would probably beat me because of just these array of kicks and things. So again, you talk about
Yeah.
nature of the sport. The sport, I mean, the level now is crazy, you know. But yeah, I mean, I haven't really, admittedly, watched many of the senior events. I know Jonathan Horn very well. He's now retired. He's working with a lot of talented athletes in the German national team. There's a girl called Corey Fatal, who fights for Chris Euron Karate as well. She's a former European All Styles champion as well. She's definitely one to
Nice.
watch. There's a girl from Cowden Beef in Scotland called Elise Bold. She's on the national team now. And you know, there's lots of people, and as a nation doing well. You know, obviously you've got Brandon Wilkins now, who made a bit
Yeah.
of a name for himself. You know, by taking out Busa, and he got a silver at the senior
Yeah.
Europeans. You know, so he's flying
That
the
was
flag
awesome.
now. He's made a
Awesome.
name for himself. You know, and now he's got a chance because there's been a bit of turnover there with now a
Yeah.
few retirements in that section. You know, he's got a chance. Um, Obviously Jordan's back, so
Jordan's
you know,
back.
you can
Yeah.
never rule out big JT. You know, so yeah, there's a lot,
Absolutely.
and I think my point is there's a lot of good homegrown talent to look out
Yes.
for, and they're putting in the hard yards, they're training hard, and yeah, I wish them all luck.
Yeah, that's great. And it does seem like, you know, although it's been building, it's just recently we've suddenly got that again, those elite athletes coming through, those young kids. They're just all young kids, really. I don't care if they're 20 years old, they're still young kids. You know, doing really great things. You know, we've got some fantastic coaches in the country,
Yeah, for sure.
supporting those guys. So what's in store for yourself again with karate this year, or the things that surround it? What's your outlook?
Yeah, I've been a bit quiet, admittedly. So I think I touched on it last time. Want to do more seminars. I do. I probably specialize in stage community seminars. So I'd like to give back because I probably haven't gave back to the sport anywhere near as much as I want. I would love to have my own club, Ben, but at this moment in time, I'm a bit too busy for that. And I'm the type of guy that would want to be all into that. So I'd probably
Yeah.
just chuck in my job, which would be crazy, and then just put all my eggs in that basket. There's no guarantee that it would take off, you know. But um, that's downstream. Never say never, you know. But definitely stage community seminars. I mean, that karate's been. I did karate for 25 years, right? It was a massive part of my life.
Mm,
Um, so I've got so much knowledge that I've retained, and if it would be really fulfilling for me if I can give, you know, even like I said, I think I touched on this last time, that I went in there just with an elite mindset doing seminars and actually got a whole newfound respect for people that I fought at the university championships because I was going in there and I'm thinking, you can't do this and that. And then I'm thinking, you just do karate because it's a hobby. And actually, you still go in not fully knowing what's going to happen. I says, hats off to you because that takes a lot of minerals to do that.
yeah.
And yeah, whether it's teaching someone a new technique who's a novice, and then you can see the cogs, and then you know they get it to work and it works for them. That's really fulfilling, as well as it is the other end where I can sort of teach the elite something intricate that they can take from the 2, 3, 4 hour session that I'm doing, that they can take and think, oh, that works for me and that'll better myself, you know. So there's lots for me to give. So I want to get back on that, probably starting, you know, it'll probably be tail end of this year, and then definitely 2024. Want to get back on the road doing that. So I'll make sure I get back on the road. And I mean, I've done them further afield. I've done them in Europe, and I eloped with my wife. in Arizona, and I took a seminar out
Nice.
there before I did it. So there was
Ah,
a risk of me
fantastic.
getting a black eye, you know. But I don't know if I told you this story too, because I did Wado Kai.
Yeah,
There was a Wado Kai contingent there in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we flew out there and did a training camp over the weekend, did 3 or 4 sessions a day. And then myself and my wife we got married in Arizona.
oh, fantastic.
So karate's always been there, is my point. Whether
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so I need to give back, and yeah, and I enjoy teaching, and I always get good compliments, about it, and I'm quite methodical because it's scientific, Like I said, when I was competing, I did a lot of video analysis. I'd break it down. I'm quite methodical, quite strategic, and actually, I put that time in. I don't just go. I mean, sometimes the seminar, just like now, we can go off in tangents, but in a seminar, normally it's planned
Yeah,
and it's quite methodical and tailored to who I'm teaching that day. So I enjoy that process, and I enjoy when I get the feedback and things. And I always make sure I sit down with my group at the end and just the kids are brilliant. They just ask the most off the chart questions
oh
you've
yeah,
ever heard,
yeah.
which is good. So it's my time to get tested at the end because some of the questions you get are just hilarious. But yeah, definitely get back doing the seminars. I would love to have my own club, but I'm just too busy at the moment. And yeah,
Fantastic. Well, Callum, I really appreciate your time. It's really great to end the season with you, and you're so easy to talk to. I could talk all night, but I know you're busy and you've got a young family as well. So thanks very much for being on the show.
thanks, mate. I appreciate that. Cheers for now.
Absolute pleasure.